Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Looks like we have a good crowd today, so we'll go ahead and get started. Thank you for joining our FMCSA Clearinghouse Countdown to Compliance webinar. Looks like we have pretty good group, still having a couple of people coming in, but we'll go ahead and get started. We do have a lot of slides to share today, and I want to put everyone's mind at ease right away. This meeting will be recorded. We will share it with anyone who asks, and we will get it up on our website so that any future reference can be made to that, send anybody in that direction. This is definitely free information that we want to get out there, make sure that everybody that is willing and wants to can get compliant on this. The PDFs are also available too. So don't feel like you have to take any notes, just sit back, absorb some information. We have someone here working today, the Q&A. So please feel free to write down any questions as you go. We'll interrupt any that are pertinent that we can do, and we'll make sure that we do get everyone answered at some point later on. All right, so we'll go and get started. We always talk about ourselves just a little bit so that you know where this information is coming from. So CMS at its root is a medical review officer company. Our chief medical review officer is Dr. Joseph Sintef, who, in addition to being our MRO, a Chattanooga doctor, longtime Chattanooga doctor, is also the chief medical officer for the FMCSA in Washington, D.C. We've been around since 1995. In that time, we reviewed a little over 3 million drug screens. We are also what's known as a third-party administrator. Now, that's something that we've been doing it before the term existed, but a third-party administrator in its generic form is somebody who helps you with your program. We do that by streamlining billing, helping with any expert questions, take care of any ordering processes, just basically anything we can do to make your drug and alcohol time easier. We do have a DOT consortium or consortium for small companies, full sleep apnea program where we do testing, therapy, and monitoring for our companies. And we do that in-house. We don't contract that out. Been doing that for a decade or so. We have small carrier compliance services. Now, this is one of our newer programs where we're actually helping the small carriers with things that typically a full-time safety director would be able to do. And we have a team that's been really successful doing that. With the COVID world that we're dealing with, we are a distributor of Matrix 90-day antimicrobial products. Now, these are the opposite of disinfectants. These are a shield that goes onto any surface that protects it for 90 days. And if you're interested in more of that, just let us know. And of course, we are facilitating COVID testing. We've partnered up with Baylor College of Medicine, where we can provide both in company testing and at-home testing to make this work a little easier for everyone as much as possible. And of course, I'm Grady. So I'm your speaker for today. I look forward to dealing with you guys. And like I said, any questions, feel free to jump right in. All right, so the agenda that we posted, I'll go ahead and get all this up on the screen. This was what was on the invitation. And this is still essentially what we're going to cover. But what we found as we went through everything is that we wanted to group it a little bit differently, and rather than going through several different sections. So this will still cover the same information, but I think you'll be happy with the way that we go through this. Just kind of, we broke it down into registration, into queries, then violation, then compliance. And we'll show a few things as we go through there. We will be making a lot of references to our website. And the reason for this is because this is a lot of dense material, and there are a lot of things. Rather than going, if you have questions in the future, rather than going through a long list of slides, way to do this, the best way to do it is modular training. And so there are several modules that are put up onto our Clearinghouse section under resources that you can click on. For instance, if you need to register, there is a registration link. Now, a lot of those are straight from the Clearinghouse. And so we just linked to their information. It's just a little less, you know, the Clearinghouse has, last we counted, about 400 or 500 different links, different sections to go through. This is a single page that you can go to for quick resources to get this stuff done. And so the registration, the violations, a lot of other things that are out there. So as we make the references, that will be on our website. Of course, these will be on the slides too as well. If anyone here is interested in NATME credits, we are offering NATME credits for this talk. The way that you'll get those, apparently a survey is emailed you at the end of the webinar, and then you can go for the credits. I don't know how that works, but I've been told it works. So if you have any problems with that, certainly give me a shout. All right, what is the Clearinghouse? So we searched for some, good photos to put in this, and this to us is the best image of what the Clearinghouse actually is. And if anybody disagrees with that, just let me know. If your time has been very easy to deal with this, you are in the rare situation trying to get used to this new policy. But the Clearinghouse essentially is just a storage database for violations. Now, those violations are drug and alcohol positives, refusals, actual knowledge, that kind of thing. It is not, it's been around for a year. little information on this. Is a lot of these are based on the questions that we've dealt with I think at this point we've helped about 150 different companies get signed up, and so these are the common points that we'll try to make. The clearinghouse does not keep up with all your drivers. They don't care about how many drivers you have or a full list of them or anything, and your negative tests do not go to the clearinghouse. The clearinghouse is just violations, and it also does manage the return to duty process when someone has had a violation to get them back in the seat and working. Also, the clearinghouse does not use social security numbers. It strictly uses the CDL number and date of birth to identify drivers, to store it on the clearinghouse for any violations and that kind of thing. So socials are not required for any of this work that we're doing. Should you register for the clearinghouse? Now, I know we have a diverse group out there today, from people who probably have already done it. They just want to make sure that they didn't miss anything to understand a little bit, to some people who say there's a deadline looming and I really don't know what I'm doing. So the first thing we wanted to go over is who needs to be in this. And I'll kind of watch the count, see if we drop off a lot after we go through this list. But anyone who's subject to the drug and alcohol regulations, which is essentially Part 382, this is for you. If you're already doing drug and alcohol testing for DOT, that sums it up. If you have a DOT number, or even if you don't have a DOT number, either way, you are still going to be, that does not preclude you if you don't have a DOT number. If you do the drug and alcohol regulations, you're still going to be there. The government and utility did not, a lot of government utilities were not given this information because a lot of them don't have DOT numbers in their states because they don't drive vehicles quite big enough, or they don't cross state lines. And so a lot of government utility have been coming in late. We've dealt with a lot of bus companies lately that have, that are not fully prepared, not been given the information to deal with. So this talk is definitely for you as you get into this. Anyone that is doing the safety sensitive duty. So, in our world of FMCSA, that's typically going to be your CDL drivers. But even if it's somebody who is a part-time CDL driver, if they're ever going to be doing what's considered safety sensitive duties, and you do the drug and alcohol regulations, you need to be in the clearinghouse. So who doesn't need to register? Well, if you do FTA, so the clearinghouse is only for FMCSA. So public buses, anyone who falls under regulation 655 under the FTA. There's a list, the military, reserves, National Guard, active, Coast Guard. All the military doesn't go in. A lot of states, Tennessee included, have exemptions for farm vehicles. Now, keep in mind, and we're not going to go through this, those are some pretty extensive list if you are actually covered and how that works. So if you fall under this category, you probably know, but it's not just somebody who says I'm a farmer that doesn't have to do the drug and alcohol. You have to meet these other regulations. And then also firefighters, rare cases, I guess, police, anyone who has sirens that doesn't have to obey regular road guidelines. So the clearinghouse, and this is the first of these slides where we gather these together. The clearinghouse puts out a monthly report, and we're going to call that the report card that they put out on themselves. This information was updated yesterday morning. So this is it goes back to December 1st, but it's considered the November report. The first one of the pages that they have goes over the registrations, and we always like to look who is registering. Are enough people registering? Is everybody up to date? So at this point, 162,000 plus companies have registered. According to the 2016 census, there are about 700,000 trucking companies out there. So this breaks down to roughly 23% of trucking companies that have registered. That's not enough. There will be a lot of people who may not even know about this after the first of the year, but it's definitely needs to increase. Of those 162,000, only about half, a little over half, have actually linked their clearinghouse to their portal account. Now, if you don't have a DOT number, spoiler alert, you don't have to have a portal. If you do have a DOT account and you don't know what the portal is, this webinar is for you, because we will talk a little bit about the portal in addition to the clearinghouse. MROs, remember, CMS is an MRO company. There are roughly 10,000 MROs nationwide, and according to this report, about 1,600 of them have registered, 16%. Whoever your MRO service is through, make sure that they are registered, make sure that they know what they're doing with the clearinghouse, because by this number, there are a lot of them that don't. And at this point, we have nearly 1.5 million drivers who have registered in the clearinghouse. Drivers are doing pretty well, 42%. And we'll go into this later, but not every driver needs to register. Only drivers who are looking for a new job or might have something show up about them need to register. So we're not looking for 100% of drivers. This is a significant number that actually have. So this is actually really encouraging that's going on. All right, we're not going to go into the extensive details on how to register, how to do violations, and that kind of stuff today. We're going to point you to the module. Instead, we're going to go over the quick hits, how you go about doing it, what the outlined steps are, and then we'll go into some problems, some helpful hints, some quick things. That way we can squeeze all this information into one webinar. If anybody needs further assistance and the modules that we put out there aren't helpful enough, you can always reach out to us later. If we have enough interest in people, we can certainly do some micro webinars on how you register, how you do violation, and post those as well. If you have a DOT number, your first step is going to be the FMCSA portal, and you're in luck. On our website, we do have the link that shows you how to do your FMCSA portal. Once you get that done, you then register in the clearinghouse, where you link your portal and your clearinghouse together. If you don't have a DOT number, like I said earlier, you get to skip the portal, go straight to the FMCSA clearinghouse. To register correctly. Now, one of the things we did is we reached out to the tech experts over at the clearinghouse that we know, and we asked them, what do we need to go over? What are some things that people aren't quite getting, the common errors that you're seeing? And one of the things that Ms. Baker pushed back is she said that we're seeing a lot of companies who are signing up as a TPA rather than as an employer. So on the guide, you will see that your step is to register as an employer. If you're going through registration, make sure that you pick that. If you've already registered, this is what you should see when you go to your dashboard. Your dashboard should show the ability to manage CTPAs, and it should show my employer profile. If it looks like this, it's wrong. If you can see manage employers and be able to manage my CTPA profile, you've set it up as a TPA. You will have problems with this. The only solution, if you have this problem, is to email out to the clearinghouse, ask them to reset your account, and then go back in and set it back up as an employer account. We've done a few of these. We've had these problems. Apparently, it's more of a problem than we realized, and so they've asked us to make sure that people know the situation. If you don't get a good response and you're having the situation, just let us know. We can reach out to the right people and usually get this done in just a day or two to get you set back on the right track. If I'm saying the word portal and you are wondering what in the world I'm talking about, you may or may not have ever seen this screen. The definition of the FMCSA portal is long and boring, and I'm not going to read it. So instead, we did a quick little graph. The portal links a lot of things together. One of the things it links together is the clearinghouse, but it also links enforcement with government, state and local governments. Eventually, the driver's license agencies will be able to get to the clearinghouse when they extend driver's licenses. Not right now, but at some point they will. Roadside, other things. We'll go into some of this, but the portal is the linking of all of these things together. The portal, however, is probably 10-year-old software, and it is where 90% of the problems that we're having occur. So in the portal instructions, this is a quick overview. Again, the detail is right there in the module to go through there. What you do is you register an account. You go to the portal, you create an account, you claim the position of company official. And when you claim this company official, it will ask you for your DOT PIN number, PIN number, and you'll have to have that. If you don't have the PIN number, again, this is detailed, so you can reach out to us. There are things online to get through there. I think we've updated that on our resource page to go the PIN number, but I'm not positive about that. We will be soon if not. Once you claim the company official, you just add the role that is called, I should have put quotes on this, DACH, Motor Carrier Admin. Now, DACH is Drug and Alcohol Clearinghouse. That's not written down many places, so it's good to know. Once you've added that role, you're done. You're done with the portal. You can then link it to your clearinghouse account. Now, those 3 steps seem very easy, but again, this is where 80% of portal problems are. So we have a quick illustration of portal problems. And again, we look for a good picture, and this is portal problems, the best that we can come up with it. I think I've actually had some clients that went off of a phone call and did this, but I couldn't swear to it. I'm not naming any names. When you do register for the portal, be prepared. Have your DOT number with you, and like I said, have your DOT PIN number with you. When you set it up, use your email for the username. Get a lot of people that were using other things to start with. It's just super convenient to use your email for username. When you set up, it's going to ask you to write down some secret answers. So you'll want to know what your password is, by the way, password, and also it's going to ask you secret questions, your mom's dog, your neighbor's cat, whatever that's out there. And when you do this, you'll want to keep up with that, because when you log back in, if you reset your password or anything, it's just good to have this at hand. The password, you'll see that long list of password requirements. People get very frustrated trying to write down their password requirements. The key one that we're having more trouble with anything is that you cannot have a password that uses your more than 5 consecutive characters from usernames. For instance, we've got a lot of people that use their email address and then, exclamation point. That won't work with a clearinghouse. So have a password written down, just ready to go. The key to the portal is get in and get out. If you sit and wait and walk off and leave it, things happen on this old software and it breaks and then it glitches and then you can't get back in and you have to reach out to the clearinghouse. Sorry, not the clearinghouse, the portal. So if you can't get into the portal, first thing to do, here's the helpline. This is a very good helpline. Now, last time I tried to reach out, it was about a 50-minute wait. So I advise doing it first thing in the morning, maybe later in the evening, you might have some luck. Once you get on, they're very helpful. They're very qualified. They can certainly get the problems fixed, but it's just a wait to get there. And I would say that right now it's probably worse than it has been lately. Several months ago, there was a message on the FMCSA website that says, if you cannot link your portal account, that's fine. There's not going to be a penalty for it. This note has now been removed. I can't say if this is true or not true, but I can say that running the queries is the key to this situation. So if you can't get into your portal, and we have a countdown, as everyone knows, you have to have queries run by January 5th. If you can't get your portal set up, it is possible, and we're not advising this, but we're telling you it's possible to get into the clearinghouse, state that you do not have a DOT number, state you do not have a portal account, and state that you don't need a DOT number, and you can get into the clearinghouse. Later on, when your portal account works, you can link up to your portal. And you'll do this from My Employer Profile, and you'll have options to add your CDL number or add a DOT number. I don't think I put a circle on that, I should have. Under Add DOT Number, you can link up your portal account at a later date. So you can run the queries then once your portal works. It is possible. Not advising it because that note is no longer there, and we can't say that you will not reach any kind of penalty, but that's what was there. Once you get the portal signed up, here are the quick instructions again for the clearinghouse. And there's a 30 some odd step process, very detailed, that's available on our website straight from the clearinghouse. But the basic steps are you create a login with the clearinghouse. Actually, you set it up at something called login.gov, but it walks you right through it. You will give it most people do a cell phone number. There are other options like having an authenticator program or having some codes. Most people just give it your cell phone. It sends your text to a cell phone that validates your account. You then link your portal account if appropriate. You then add a CDL number if appropriate. And then you add a CTPA, which stands for Consortium Third Party Administrator, if you want to. And Corporate Medical Services certainly is a CTPA that's set up in the program. If you are adding corporate medical services, all you have to do is type CMS. We're the only TPA that pops up when you type CMS. If you have your own, there's lots of CTPAs out there, and you're actually allowed to add as many as you want. Lastly, you buy queries, and there's I think we'll get into this in a second. Yeah, when you buy the queries, we have a sheet on that, and you're done. Again, 6 easy steps. Most people don't have a problem getting into the clearinghouse. Brand new software, they paid millions to get it done. It works very well. If you can get through the portal, getting into the clearinghouse is not a significant problem. Okay, so I've got a few slides in here that, all right, so what if I don't want to register? What if I don't want to do this? So the regulations do not specifically require you to register. What they do require is that you run queries. And if you don't run queries, it's enforceable by fines. And of course, you must register to run queries. So if you don't want to register, you're kind of stuck because you will need to run these queries. Speaking of queries, how do you do it? So once you're registered, you'll have this. There are several ways in the clearinghouse, different buttons that do exactly the same thing. Our references are always going to be from this dashboard just because it's easy to group out. So in this section, we're going to deal with the queries. The first one we're going to look at are the query plans. Now you'll notice where that little red arrow is, it tells you have to pick a plan size. And over on the right side, I know you can't quite read that, but these are all the packages. But don't worry, they're all $1.25. Whether you buy 1, 2, 5, they're all $1.25. So buy what you need. I tell people that they're like stamps at the post office. They never expire. You buy them now, but it is possible that they will cost more in the future. So if you want to buy a few extras and speculate, then you certainly can. The regulations do not say that they shall charge $1.25. The regulations say that they may charge a reasonable fee to pay for the program, $1.25 each. If you want to buy over 19,600 queries, you can buy the unlimited plan at $24,500. There are companies who have done this, typically big companies, and we'll see how that skews the data a little bit shortly when we're doing that. Once you choose how many queries you want, this is what we said, you'll buy it. These are the options to pay for your queries. We mentioned earlier bus companies. Bus companies and a lot of other government entities have a big problem with this because they don't have a way to just immediately pay for something. They have to have a PO, set it up as a contract, and pay it out to meet their guidelines for their governmental entity. If this is you, reach out to CMS. If you don't have a TPA that can help you with this, we'll get you through this. We'll help get it paid and then bill you back for it or whatever just to make it work. Okay, talking more about queries. If you get into the clearinghouse, there are some fine lines between this, but essentially there are full queries and limited queries. The full queries are typically used for pre-employment, and the limited queries are typically used for your annual updates. If you've seen the email from the clearinghouse, they're telling you that you need to have your limited queries done, or actually all your queries read, but the warnings say to use your annuals. We'll talk about that in just a minute. Pre-employment full queries. are required at hiring. Now, I know that a lot of people are latecomers to the clearinghouse. I know that you did not run a pre-employment query when you hired the person. From now on, you should. Don't put the person, when you do a pre-employment query, the driver also has to register in the clearinghouse. They give something called specific consent. They will get in their query something that says, I consent to this query. You have to have the query result. I'm not saying start the query. You actually have to have the query run before this driver drives a truck, just like the drug test. You got to have the drug test result back. You have to have the query result back. If you don't, they go driving down the road and you don't have a query back, you could get in trouble. Key here, you cannot perform limited queries at pre-employment. You cannot just send one out that doesn't require that access. The FMCSA did grant a waiver to, I think it was the Motion Picture Institute, some group on that, but to allow them to do it. But at this point, the 99.9% of the rest of it, you have to do a pre-employment query, which is a full query. The good news is that this pre-employment query includes what they call a 30-day look back. So if your driver hires on with you and they pass your drug test, but 2 days before they took a drug test with one of your neighboring companies and they failed that drug test, you will get the notice when that actually publishes to the clearinghouse within a few days. So you'll have that information, that new information shows up on that driver, and you'll have to get them to consent to give you the query at that point. But it kind of protects you, where a limited query just does an instantaneous look. So for your annual queries, you are allowed to use a limited query. You can also use a full query, but that's kind of silly. Why would you ask a driver to consent for just an annual query when you can just do a limited without having to reach out to them at all? Surprise, annual queries are required annually. It's just the name. But the driver does not need a clearinghouse account for a limited query. They do not have to have logged in. They don't have to have done all this other stuff. They just have to have a CDL number. When you run the limited query, it just looks in Citadis at their CDL number to see if anything shows up. There is a consent that they have to sign, though, and that needs to be in your driver files, either your drug and alcohol file, your driver file. There's not any real clearness on that. We think the drug and alcohol file is the best. There is some verbiage that the FMCSA suggests, but essentially it's a note that the driver says, hey, I know you're going to be running annual queries on me, and I allow you to do that for a specific time period. The smartest thing is to say is for as long as I'm employed with you or contracting with you or something to work that out with. We do have the sample on our website that is the sample text for that. And if you would like, we'd be more than happy to send you the Word version of that, which you can just copy and paste into your letterhead. Sample on that. Again, you cannot perform limited queries on pre-employment. Seems like I just said this on the last slide because it's important. We have the clearinghouse won't stop you from performing a limited query, but it is not compliant. You will not pass an audit at that point. Also, while I said that the annual queries are required annually, they're not limited annually. You can actually run them as often as you like. We will get into why, I think, on the next slide. No, it'll be a minute. Surprise. How do you run a query? Get used to this screen. This is the screen that you'll do when you're running any query, when you're doing any violation. This is what's required. And at this point, I will say that there are companies charging to do these queries. It is not a complicated thing. It is more trouble for you to reach out to get somebody else to do this, to do it yourself. If you can type your driver's first and last name, date of birth, and CDL number, you can run a query. In the amount of time it took me to say this, you could have typed it. You then pick what type of query you want. You click next, you say run query, and then you get a result. That's how long it takes. If you're paying somebody $3 or $4 or $5 to do that, then it's not that hard. It really isn't. So this is an example of someone who is not prohibited. What it would come back, it will say driver not prohibited. You can click on that view query screen, see a little bit more detail. The next slide is an example of a driver who is prohibited. And I know you can't quite make that out, so we'll zoom in just a little bit. This particular driver was prohibited because of an alcohol test refusal. They failed to appear for a post-accident alcohol test. And this is, essentially what you would get for this information to see that this person is prohibited in the clearinghouse. So those are the results of the two queries, prohibited and not prohibited. When you're in your dashboard, one of the cool tools is the query history. You'll be able to see this information. Now, on the left, that's in that big red outline, is the query history filter. This actually is a really good filter. Those blue check boxes, you can turn them on or off. And as soon as you do, there's no apply or anything that you have to search. On the right side, where you can see all the information changes based on what you selected. So if you selected, in this situation, you can see you're looking at all your pre-employment, but you can zoom into just your pre-employments. They're in query status. You can zoom into just those that have specific consent, and you can zoom in on the 39 with the driver's prohibited if you wanted to. Another helpful hint is look for color, and you'll see on this query history screen, on the left side of those top two queries, you have a red and a yellow. The red is typically going to mean, sorry, let me get back over there. The red is typically going to mean that the driver is prohibited, or the yellow means you need to do something. And it's either at saying that the driver needs to provide consent, or it might say that there's new information that you need to read. So they're kind of action items, the yellow and red are. So that query history is a very useful tool. We're going to go back to the report card now. This second page on the Clearinghouse report card is about the queries. Now, the queries this shows, like I said, you can see those track lines, and they show monthly, month to month, what's going on. So this is again the November report. At this point, as of December 1st, 2.9 million queries have been performed. So I think it's definitely safe to say at this point, the Clearinghouse has exceeded 3 million queries. So successfully doing very well. But keep in mind these 3 million queries that only 23% of companies have registered. What that means, if you look at these limited queries, is that large carriers with unlimited query plans very possibly are doing multiple limited queries. You can actually see that the full employment and the limited queries are neck and neck. There have actually been more limited queries performed than full. So there is a strong upward trend from October to November. I think FreightWaves just reported on this, and they said, I forgot the number, but a 15% rate, maybe a 50% increase. But a lot of people here at the buzzer are really doing their queries and getting this done. So don't be left out. It's definitely time to do it. You may have received an email recently from the Clearinghouse that said, hey, you have to run all your new queries by January 5th. What do I do? Here's the helpful hint. Do not let the sun set 365 days on any driver without running a query. Simple, straightforward, it's easy to keep up with, and it makes a nice picture. What this means is that if you hired somebody in June, you have to run a query on them on or before next June if they stay with you. If you hired somebody in January, you have to run a query on them by next January if you ran the pre-employment query. Anybody that's been with you since before January, you have to run one this year at some point. There's two ways that people are typically running their queries. Either they're doing their annual queries all on the same day each year, and they just pick a Clearinghouse day. And this is really handy because of the bulk import, where you can just copy and paste all of your information to Clearinghouse, and it will run all of the drivers at once. The downside to that is if you pick a single Clearinghouse day, you might have for the first year somebody who has had a query run just a few days earlier. So you're normalizing the data by putting everybody in the same day. The other option is when you do your annual review on a driver, you do your MRO pull, you can also do a Clearinghouse limited query. Two different ways, they both work. The important thing is that you're consistent and you stay with it. All right, what if you don't want to run queries? Don't register and don't want to run queries. This is a bunch of junk that the government's put on us. Well, obviously it's not a good idea to not run queries. If you have a violation on your driver, roadside inspection has access to the Clearinghouse as of April of this year. Below is an actual publication that they sent internally called Query Central that shows roadside inspectors how to go to the Clearinghouse and look to see if a driver has a violation against them. If they do, they put you out of service with a 390.3 code that affects your safety numbers, and your load is not going anywhere. If you get audited and you have not done your queries, obviously they may result in fines. We have been talking to the Clearinghouse officials here in Tennessee, and they are saying that typically they are, they're not doing any mass audits of the data right now. They're doing it one-on-one, and just the Clearinghouse is certainly a part in that. And I can't officially say this, but I believe there's been some grace this year on people not doing queries as far as not going directly to fines. I think that will change very quickly. I think 2021, we will see them taking a lot more serious angle on getting this done and ensuring that people are up with fines. If you don't run queries and you have a driver that has a prohibited status in the Clearinghouse and you didn't check it and there's a crash, you will lose, and you'll lose big. If it is something that, reasonable standards, you easily could have and should have checked the Clearinghouse, and you should have known that that driver was there, you are in big trouble, and hope you got good insurance. I don't mean that in a light way at all. It's significant for something very simple to do that. Most importantly, all this other stuff aside, people could be hurt. If you have somebody who's prohibited, if somebody's had a drug issue and they passed your pre-employment test, but they failed one somewhere else, people could be hurt. So this is why you want to run these queries, and also why you might want to run them more than annually if you want to. There's nothing that says you can't run them. They cost $1.25 each. There's nothing wrong with running them quarterly. There's nothing wrong with just ensuring that you have the safest fleet out there. So definitely personal preference on that, but useful information.
Hey, Grady, we have a question.
Oh, go ahead.
What if a driver you hire is not in the query?
Not in the Clearinghouse?
I think, yeah, possibly the Clearinghouse.
Sure, and that's regular. So on our website, where we have the module for how an employer will sign up for Clearinghouse, there's one right next to it for how a driver, if I'm not mistaken, I think that one is a picture of a steering wheel, how a driver enrolls in the Clearinghouse. In order for you to run that pre-employment query, the driver has to give consent. And in order to do that, they have to be in the Clearinghouse. So the answer is they have to enroll, or somebody has to help them enroll. And it's a very step-by-step process. I know I've seen a lot of questions out there that are similar, like what if the driver doesn't have a laptop, they don't have a smartphone, they've never used a computer before, in that situation, actually, I think the slide that we have up is exactly right. What if the driver does not give consent? Don't let them operate. Bring them into your office, give them a loaner computer, show them how to do these steps, print these out, put them on the wall, let people get in so that they can give you permission to run these queries on this consent. You need to have that in before you put them in the seat of the truck. You're just asking for trouble if you don't. If they don't give consent, if you do a limited query and it comes back saying the driver is pending consent, then you need to, well, see if I can say this the right way. If it's pending consent, it means that information is about them in the Clearinghouse. And keep in mind that first slide, the Clearinghouse does not keep up with all the awards they've won. There's nothing good about them in the Clearinghouse. So if you get that notice, you need to start making internal plans to get that driver off the road as quickly as possible. Technically, they have 24 hours to give you specific consent. If they don't, you have to pull them off the road. This regulation works really well because a lot of questions up front were, well, what if the driver's off duty and I do the limited and it comes back with pending consent? Or what if they're on vacation and I do this limited query and it comes back with pending consent? Excellent. If they happen to check their computer, then they can give you that pending consent, that specific consent. If they don't, when they come back, don't put them in the seat of the truck until they do. Like I said, unfortunately, most of the time, you're probably going to see that there's a problem with that driver, that something has been published, and we hope it's nothing, but typically there's a violation of some sort against them that you're going to find. So it's not saying that you have to terminate them if they don't give you specific consent in 24 hours. It's just saying that you can't let them drive a truck.
So a quick question on that.
Yeah.
So say that the driver does not give specific consent within that 24-hour frame, and you do have to redo the query. Are you charged for both queries?
Good question. Good question. A limited consent, when it kicks up, it automatically, let's use the word, graduates to a full query if there is consent needed, and it's a single query. You don't have to redo anything. It goes from a limited up to a full if something shows up, and you only get charged for completed queries. So if you have somebody that you're going to hire, you can go ahead and start a Clearinghouse query for them before they even come, to see you. And there are some driver applicant companies that are doing this ahead of time. The regulations have not dictated, like a drug screen. You need a pre-employment drug screen, basically, no more than 30 days before they start any safety sensitive operations, getting your random pool. The Clearinghouse, they haven't really laid that out, but the 30-day rule is not far off. So you could theoretically do a pre-employment query with a pending driver before they ever come to see you. That could be part of your process to make sure that that's done. If the driver never gives consent, or you decide for other reasons not to hire the driver before they give consent, you can cancel that query and you get credit for that query back. They don't refund you your $1.25. You still have that, but you get the credit back for the query. One of the big things we see are problems with verifying the driver. So when you go to the query, and I don't have that screen back up, but when you enter the driver name, their date of birth, and their CDL number, seems like half the time you'll get something pushed back that says, hey, we were unable to verify this driver. First thing to do is just get a copy of the driver's license, make sure that you've got the CDL number and the date of birth right, helpful hints. Make sure that any leading zeros are included. Again, here in Tennessee, every driver's license starts with 1 0. In South Carolina, I think it is, they have 4 zeros at the beginning of the license number. And anytime you copy that from a spreadsheet, those zeros go away. So make sure you include that. Some states have dashes in the driver's licenses. Wisconsin, Minnesota, I know do. And in those guys, you don't use the dashes, even though it shows up in the driver's license. So try both ways. You get 2 tries before you have to cancel the query and start over. And again, you don't get charged for any of that kind of stuff. So once you verify the driver, once you get the green checkbox that says the driver is verified, if the driver says, hey, I don't see this on my request, more than likely it just means that their CDL is not correctly linked on their end, which means maybe they left a 0 out. And the way they do that is they go to their Clearinghouse just under that same My Employer profile that we showed you earlier, and they will see, in this situation, you see View Driver Profile. This is one that was correctly set up. If it's not, you might see Add CDL, or just even, check that box, and that's where it will show their driver's license. And when they update their CDL, it will tell them if it verified correctly or not. A lot of drivers create the Clearinghouse account, and they never go as far as to add their CDL number. They think they have a perfectly good Clearinghouse account, but until you have that CDL linked, there's nothing that tells them one way or another. If you do all this and you check everything, you check the CDL and nothing's going through, contact us. We'll reach out to our friends at the Clearinghouse, and usually in a couple of days, they're able to tell us, actually sometimes even faster than that, they can tell us if there's a problem with the driver's license. Usually they'll go to the state, figure out what's going on, reset it at the state, and occasionally we find out that entire states are having issues. This is new stuff. It's fairly complicated. Anytime you're trying to link 50 states, and I think they're probably doing territories as well with a database, there's certainly going to be problems. So a lot of that's worked out. We don't see nearly as many of those issues as we did.
All right, so quick question, just to recap, what if the query status in the Clearinghouse says driver not verified?
Driver not verified, then you need to go back into that query, and that typically means you were not able to successfully run it. So you need to go back into the query, push the CDL, the date of birth, make sure that's good, and make sure that it verifies on your end. That is something, actually, that's something you'll see a lot of times on a limited query if you do that bulk upload. Now, the bulk upload, actually, we're on this good screen. One of the, we did not talk in detail about the bulk upload. If you're very comfortable with spreadsheets and converting those over to a tab separated file, then you can do a bulk upload. If not, you can do the one at one. We'll be happy to help you. Of course, I probably need to say that every single time. We're happy to help anybody with whatever. We don't charge for that. To show you how that works. And you could submit your entire fleet over, and it usually runs overnight. So if you run a bulk upload on a couple hundred drivers, or one driver, 1,000 drivers, either way, when you come in the morning, you'll see a certain number that didn't verify. And this is actually something that we've seen a lot of times where the bulk upload didn't pick it. We go back in and do an individual query, and it works just fine with exactly the same information. I can't explain that, but that seems to work. So you'll see a lot of those if you do a bulk, particularly it says driver not verified. Just try it again, see if it works, is our best advice on that. Make sure the CDL and the date of birth match up. Okay, so moving from queries over to violations. Now, violations is a lot quicker. We'll just be here for a few minutes. What is a violation? Drug and alcohol violations. So you've got drug violations. If somebody is positive for a drug test, that is the MRO's job to report. You don't pick the MRO in your Clearinghouse account. The MRO is picked when a drug test is done. Every time you've seen a chain of custody, you probably never looked at it, but up at the top right, it lists an MROs. For instance, ours says Corporate Medical Services, Dr. Centef. If we have a non-negative test, it's our job to report that back to the Clearinghouse within a couple of days. The employer's responsibility are for alcohol positives and for refusals to test under most situations. That is something you can delegate out to your TPA, but you don't have to. If you have an agreement with a TPA, you need to make absolutely sure who's doing what. It is, no matter what, it is the employer's responsibility. So if you delegate it, you can't blame them if something comes back and happens. So it's your responsibility to make sure to get it done. This is why we advise that you just do it. Reporting a violation is just as easy as running a query. We have a module for this on our training. So I'm sure there's nobody on this webinar right now that logged on because they have to report a violation and they're just sitting there waiting to get it done. But when you do, this is where it'll be. And it's a quick step process to get there. Helpful hints are, as we already said, if a MRO reports this for the drug, you as the employer cannot see that violation. When you go, just like there's a query history, there's a violation summary, and you can see all the violations that have been reported. You will see the alcohol and the refusals and the actual knowledge stuff that you have put in there, but you will not see drug violations. This is a privacy issue with the Clearinghouse that we really don't agree with. As a matter of fact, on our drug test results, we post where the test number that we have posted into the Clearinghouse when we send it to our company, so that you do have that transparency and you know that it's been done. Remember back earlier, there's a lot of MROs that are not certified. So it is important that you verify this is getting done, even though you can't see it on the Clearinghouse. Likewise, if we are your TPA, I cannot see if you have posted an alcohol violation on the portal. So that's where that good communication between the two is important. If a TPA reports something, you delegate a TPA on your Clearinghouse account. If your TPA reports it, you can see anything that they do. So you can see their work. You just can't see something that an MRO has done. Remember, at CMS, we're an MRO and a TPA, so it gets a little confusing. But the MRO handles the drug, the TPA helps you with the other stuff. It's the easiest way to say it. If you have to report a refusal or an actual knowledge, you do have to upload some data. So it's a little bit more detailed. When that happens, refer over to this module first, read through it, make sure you got what you need, and then report it. It's not that hard. And call us, call your CTPA, make sure that you get that done, whatever's easier for you. Make sure that you work with your MRO on how to handle shy bladders. This is the refusal that is complicated. If someone stays at a collection site for the full 3 hours and they can't produce a specimen, it's a shy bladder. They have an opportunity to see if there's a medical reason for that before it's reported in the clearinghouse why they couldn't go. How that's handled, it gets a little complicated, certainly out of the scope for this webinar, but make sure that your MRO is good with how that works, that you're good with how that works, that you have a good plan in place. This is one of the things that the technical experts over at the clearinghouse, Ms. Baker, said that she wanted us to get across, is when the MRO files it as a drug, the employer should not file the same exact drug violation as actual knowledge. Now, we're not talking about actual knowledge, but actual knowledge is if you see someone using drugs, if they have a DUI in a commercial vehicle, you have actual knowledge that they were using drugs. You can file that. But if you have a drug test that comes back as positive, that's not something that is for you to report. That's for your MRO. They said, please don't do that because there are some duplicate violations that are causing some problems. Let's look at what the clearinghouse says about violations. Again, November report, just a couple of days old. There have been over 50,000, nearly 51,000 violations. That is 1.5% of drivers. The clearinghouse did not expect it to be this many. This is an overperformer and not in a good way. They absolutely, there are a lot of these people that are out there. Now you will notice, here we are, October, November, there's been a slight downward trend in the drug. And I know it's kind of hard to read, but the drug is the blue there and the alcohol is the yellow on this particular shot. You can see a slight downward trend on the drug. The alcohol's actually trended up a little bit for the alcohol test refusals. Of the violations, 82% are drug reported by the MRO. So 4,000 or so are positive drug tests have been reported. Of these, marijuana dwarfs the other drugs by 4-to-1. So it's marijuana is in the lead, and then cocaine after that. You've got meth and amphetamines and some other stuff not too far behind the cocaine and meth. But marijuana is far out in the lead. A lot of people ask why this is. Is it CBD? It's the legalization. There's a lot of variables that play into this. But the fact of the matter is there are a lot of people out there. At this point, there are 38,000 drivers who are in prohibited status. That means they're not allowed to drive. So if you're not running pre-employment queries, if you've had a driver for a while, guess which one of those 38,000 you have in your truck right now? So that's why you want to run queries, because you want to know for sure that none of those are yours, because they are probably still out applying for jobs and looking for companies that are not using the clearinghouse so that they can continue to work. There are about 4,000 drivers that have gone through the return to duty process. This is certainly something to be discussed. If you hire somebody back, you want to make sure you do it right. If they have an open violation, we can help you with that, or your other TPA should be able to help you with that. The return to duty process is a little complicated how it works. It requires an SAP, it requires the driver to log in, and it requires you as the employer to do some pretty specific tasks that if you have an audit will be low-hanging fruit if you don't do them right. So make sure if you do hire somebody back that you do it right. Second page on there, another page on that violations report card. Again, I know you can't see the extreme detail on that, but you can see that yellow line. That's marijuana, and you can see the other drugs behind it. Total of all these substances was, like I said, about 50,000 queries that have been reported that way. I'm sorry, violations, not queries, 50,000 violations. All right, so what if you don't want to report violations, right? We're not even talking about that anymore. You better report violations. As an employer, you have 3 days to get that done. By the end of the 3rd business days is technically what you want to do. If it takes you another day, I don't think anybody's going to be, looking at you that closely. But let's say that there's an accident in that 3rd day. You've let somebody go. They go work for somebody else. They're on the road. You want to get this done. You want to get it done right. So whether it's you, whether it's your TPA doing the work, again, the MRO reporting drug tests that's their job to get that done right. You just want to make sure that you have an MRO that's doing the job right. You can't necessarily see it, but your job to report this stuff is within 3 business days. For the alcohol positives, for any refusals to test, say somebody doesn't want to go for the random test, et cetera, and so on. It's entirely possible that somebody has another job already in these situations too. So keep that in mind, that by posting the violation, you are doing a public safety. So that closes violations. And I know we're getting a little bit close on time here, so we'll continue to go through this. But on violations, we talked about the violation history. We did not go into detail on reporting that violation. That's on that module. But the first screen that we showed you where you entered the driver's name and the date of birth, exactly the same screen. And then you have the option of what type of violation you want to enter. And that's it. It's not that complicated. The people that have reached out to us for help, typically while they're on hold for less than 2 or 3 minutes, when we are able to pick them up on that, then they have already solved it and said, we've already done it, no big deal. So it goes that quickly.
Hey, Grady, one One question that I field a lot is, are there any exemptions for drivers? Are there any type of ADA exemption? Is there any type of medical issue that a driver may have that would disqualify them from needing to, or I guess, allow them to not have to register?
It's a great question. Easy answer. No. There's not. There's any driver that's out there working has to be able to consent when required to give a query. But as far as like a ADA, EOC or whatever, there's no punishment if a driver fails to consent. There's not, if they just decide they don't want to give you consent, there's no fines, there's no jail time or anything like that. The employer is the one that's responsible. The employer is the one that says, if I don't get this consent, you can't drive a truck for me. Then if the employer has somebody driving a truck that hasn't given consent, that's when you're going to have some problems. So as far as, the driver just has to do what's asked of them in order to continue working and do their jobs. Okay, so anyway, moving to compliance, and we circled the report section of this. These are the regulations that talk about what type of record keeping and what type of information you have to have for compliance. And I'm not going to read them in detail, but essentially they say that the employers have to keep a copy of every query. But as of 2023, if you still have a valid registration, you meet the requirement. So when this Clearinghouse first kicked off, we asked the tech experts over at the Clearinghouse, what are you trying to say? They said, we keep up with everything. Your drivers, your employers do not have to keep up with the queries outside of the Clearinghouse to get that done. So then we talked to all the auditors we know, and they said, yeah, right. I said, you better keep your own stuff. And every carrier knows that that's the answer that we're looking for. So what's the best way to keep up with all these queries? So we showed you the screenshots. You can take the screenshots, you can print them, you can put them in a file. But this report that we show you, the compliance report, works really, really well. Just set yourself a 1 month reminder. You're going to click on the compliance report and it pops up a box almost instantly that says download this report. As soon as you click the download, it downloads an Excel file. In the Excel file, of course, I'm not going to show a whole Excel file here, but it has different tabs on it that shows really what your clearinghouse status was like at that particular time. You can see, how many people were using it. You can see the TPAs that you had. You can see the driver checks. You can see all the violations that you had. It's just a really good snapshot in time that should anything happen with the clearinghouse, it gets hacked, it gets shut down, something else happens, lightning, whatever, you have a really good record of your queries and of your system whenever you did that. So super easy way to keep up with it, and should help keep you out of trouble should the worst things happen. Let's talk a little bit more about CTPAs, what they can and can't do. So this is the screen that shows how you authorize a CTPA. And this particular screen, you can kind of see the blue check boxes there. There's 3 things that you can authorize a CTPA to do. One is you can authorize them to report violations. And skipping ahead a little bit, as an owner-operator, you have to have a CTPA to report violations. You can also ask them to report return to duty information. Now, remember, I told you this is, hiring somebody after they've had a violation gets complicated. You have to have an SAP, you got to have a follow-up plan, you've got to do that follow-up plan. The testing that you do has to be observed. There's a lot to it. We're happy to help you with it. Just, make sure you know what you're doing. You can have the TPA to upload that. You can do it yourself. There's only a couple of things that you technically have to do in the clearinghouse for that. So it's no big deal. For an owner-operator, it is something that the CTPA has to do for you. Conducting of queries is something that you can have a CTPA do. Like I said, a lot of these driver processing applicant companies are offering doing queries for you when you decide to hire a driver. Works really well on their end. There is not anything that is an automatic program that they promise that it will come soon, but at some point soon they will have what's called an API, where a company can let a computer order this query on your behalf. And when that happens, we'll have that to where you can just push, when you order your drug test, you can push the query. We are happy to do queries for you, but like I think you'll get the gist of it. We'd rather show you how to do this because we don't want to stand in your way. And they're so easy. I'm not going to charge you for a minute's worth of work. It's so much easier for you just to get it done. One thing of note is that a CTPA on their login account cannot buy queries. Only the employer can buy queries. So unless you've given somebody access to your employer account where they can get in or take that. And then again, this is, where the school buses and other government entities have a real problem with this, is that they can't delegate a CTPA to buy these queries for them. And so that's just one thing to work around as we go through this. We do have a lot of owner operators out here. We specifically try to get owner operators up on this because this is something that they have to do. Now, owner operators wear a lot of hats. These are the entrepreneurs in our country. These are the people who are doing working night and day and trying to keep up with it. And in the clearinghouse, it's no different. They act as an employer and a driver. They also must pick a CTPA, as we said a minute ago, to report violations and return to duty processes. And this is something we've had a lot of misinformation that's out there. An owner operator is allowed to run a query on themselves, and they must run the queries to be in compliance, just like any other company. There's nothing that says the CTPA has to run the query on them. There's a lot of misinformation from some federal entities on this, local federal entities, not at the highest level. We specifically reached out to technical experts at the clearinghouse, and they said, yeah, if you were not allowed to run a query, we wouldn't let you run a query on yourself. So if an owner operator logs in, they can run the query with no problem. They just have to pay the $1.25. Now you can hire the TPA to do that, just like any other company can, but that's an extra thing. That's not part of what's required as a CTPA for the clearinghouse to get that done. You can delegate, you can authorize them to do it, but it's not something that's required. Okay, owner operators and multiple companies. This is cool. I actually like this. On our web portal for our clients, if you manage multiple companies, you can see multiple companies similar to this. And so the clearinghouse has the same kind of concept. If you are a owner operator, you will have a role just like this on your screen. Once you've linked up your CDL and also your company, you'll have two options where you can look at yourself as the company, or you can look at yourself as a driver. If you are a safety director that's here with us today, and you manage more than one company, or if you're a safety consultant or whatever that has multiple CTPAs or whatever, you can have the current, well, the CTPA is not that way. If you're an employer account that has multiple companies, you can set up the multiple roles on this way. And skip ahead. Okay, I thought I had more of this information in the slide, but I don't. How do you do that? You have to go back to the portal. So the portal is what drives the roles in the clearinghouse, because you only want to have one clearinghouse login. You don't want to have a different email for every company that you log in. If you are simply safety director and you have to manage multiple companies, that's a headache. Instead, if you go to the portal and you link up multiple DOT accounts, and remember, we have a portal training guide. It's not that hard to do it if you have the DOT pin. You can link those up. If those are linked to your portal account, within, I don't know, somewhere between an hour and a day, they will show up here as a current role, and you'll be able to drop down and see multiple companies from the same clearinghouse account. It's pretty cool. Works very well. All right, we are getting toward the end. We're just kind of throwing some stuff out there that we've had a lot of people that have asked about, and one of those is, what does a driver see? What does a driver's account look like? We see a lot of people that, as employers don't see that. CTPA certainly don't see a lot of that. So a driver, when they log in, they are greeted with their first name. Super cool, right? Very personal. And you can see the traffic light off to the right where it says no drug and alcohol violation. So they're good to go. You can see down below that where they have been consented by some fictitious company to give consent or not give consent. And obviously you want them to hit the green box. So when they log on, this is what you can say, look, this is what I want you to do. It's going to look like this, hit the green box, good to go. And most of them get that done just right. You can see that there's a violation somewhere there too. That's about all that you see at the clearinghouse level for a driver. I mean, they've got a driver dashboard that can show them notifications by email, clearinghouse, that kind of, same as everybody else, but there's not a lot more in there for a driver. So it's very simple, very straightforward once they get logged in. And remember, oh, go ahead.
Sorry, Tim has a question. He said, this is only if the owner operator operates under their own authority, correct? If they are operating under the carrier's authority, the carrier is taking care of this, correct?
Yes, that is really good, Tim. I should probably add a slide for that. Yes, if you are an owner operator, your requirements are to consent when that carrier hires you to the pre-employment query, and that carrier should also give you that consent, the general consent form we talked about at some point, ideally during your onboarding, where you are signing something giving that carrier permission to run limited queries on you. Their job is to manage, just like it's the same as a drug testing. If you are an owner operator that's operating under your own authority, you have to have a pre-employment drug test on yourself. You have to have a random program. And since you cannot wake up in the morning and surprise yourself with a random drug test, you have to be part of a consortium or consortium to do that situation. Same thing with the clearinghouse. If you're an owner operator, you have to have a CTPA that send in any violations for you, however that's supposed to work. But if you're operating under a bigger company, it's their job to do it. So it follows those drug testing regulations. But man, that's a good question. All right, we reference back to the CMS website one more time, just to show you guys where all that module training was. So, this, and again, some of this is our own creation, our own little slides to get there, but a lot of it comes straight from the Clearinghouse. And so it's really, I'm not going to take credit for it. In other words, it's high quality. It's really good stuff that's out there. Just go straight to the Clearinghouse. I think it's just a little easier to see on ours. So you can go to the Clearinghouse, go to their learning center to see all very much the same stuff. They do have a really good FAQ section, really good searching. They've put a lot of time and effort into the Clearinghouse. If the portal wasn't such an aggravation, this would not be nearly a stressful thing for a lot of people.
Hey, Grady, let me throw in there. I'm getting a couple of questions, people wanting a copy of the slide deck once we're done. So be sure to leave a message or drop a little note in the question and answers, and we will definitely add you to that email distribution list to get a copy of everything.
Absolutely. And I think I've realized that we have committed the worst thing you can do on a webinar is I don't have all of our contact information at the end of this slide. I failed to add that. So everybody knows, CMS on this. You can see our website here, and the email address is actually shown in little bitty font right there. But if you'll just, you can get to our website. It's info@corporatemedicalservices.com. So if you'll email something to info@corporatemedicalservices.com, we'll be happy to share the slide deck. This is something that will be recorded, and so we will eventually have it up on our website. And if you would like a copy of this presentation, the downloaded copy, will provide a link to that too before it gets up on the website. So we realize this is it's good information, it's definitely timely, and it's one of those things you need to get it done pretty urgently. So we want to get that into as many people's hands as possible, just as fast as possible. So with that, I think the last slide is just a question slide. Do we have anything else that's come in that anybody asked us at this point?
Let's see. Right now, I think no new questions, just several people, of course, wanting copies of the presentation. We'll get that over to you here in just a few minutes.
Oh, hi, Emily. Hi, Donna. Yeah, I'm scrolling over on these too. Hey, good. It's good to see some of these people on here. Absolutely. So yeah, guys, Leanne, Suzanne, the list goes on and on. I'm not going to scroll through all that. Okay, well, at that point, I think we'll end it here. You guys know how to reach out to us. You know how to get there for more information. Hope this is useful for you. If there's anything that you did not learn that you want to know, any question comes up, we would love to be able to find out answers for you. We want to be a good resource for everybody out there. So with that being said, I will sign off. Everybody have a great day, great weekend. Upcoming holiday is Christmas, and we certainly wish everybody out there a Merry Christmas. That's all.